Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dojo Live this Tuesday, July 26th, 2022. I still cannot believe that we're like more than halfway done with the year. So, my name is Kim Lantis, airing from Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico, and it's my pleasure to be joined by teammate America Guerrero
Hello,
out of
everybody.
Mexico City. Hey, Ame. And of course, the most important person of today's show, and that is Gil Allouche, the CEO and founder of Metadata IO. Gil, thank you so much for joining us today out of the Dominican
Yeah, thank you
Republic,
for having me.
correct?
Yes, that's right, Santiago de la Caballeros.
All right. Look at that. That's Spanish pronunciation. Gil, I'm really interested to learn more about you as an individual. From what I gathered pre-show, you are quite the international, and I'm really interested in your story. So please tell us a bit more about yourself and how this led up to your time with Metadata.
Yeah, for sure. I was born and raised in Israel, in a small town called Netanya, and I was into computers from very early age, like 8, 7, 8. I was also into entrepreneurship from very early on, illegal at first, and then more and more legal as time went by.
We'll talk about that on
Uh,
another show.
okay, on a different show. And yeah, I was, after my military service, I worked for a few years as an software engineer, and I wanted to learn more about the business side, and not only write code. So I did my MBA in Boston in a place called Babson College, and then I spent about 8 years running marketing for three B2B software enterprise companies, which is where I fell in love with the whole concept of generating demand for salespeople and then even helping close that business and owning essentially the entire profit and loss unit. I did that for about 8 years. I learned a lot about what's difficult about this role and what could be innovated, and that nice balance of knowing how to innovate and then learning what should be innovated from the business world is what got me to start Metadata.
Aha, yes. So an expert in the sense of nothing like living through it to know how to get out of it, or if we want to think about it that way. Perfect. So let's talk about Metadata IO and your B2B marketing. Who are you? What do you do? What's the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, so Metadata IO started in 2016, so about 6 years ago, with the initial promise was to automate all the technical, repetitive, mundane tasks that are surrounded around generating demand for sales in a B2B software company. Uh, there are 1,000 different things that the VP of marketing can do when they start a new role. They can send email nurturing campaigns and email blast and buy leads and syndicate and run advertisements, and the list goes on and on. And each and every one of those requires a lot of technical, repetitive, mundane tasks, a lot. And being a technical person, I was able to run many of those things, but also realize it's kind of a waste of time. And also, no one signed up for that. No one signed up for marketing thinking they're going to wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning and update like 1,000 UTM tags on a spreadsheet because they made some typo on Facebook ads. No one signed up for that. And so I started Metadata so that no marketer should ever worry about that. In fact, they should never ever log in to a Facebook Business Manager or a LinkedIn Ad Manager or a Google AdWords. They should never download CSV file and move them 7 different locations and none of that stuff. And so Metadata today kind of fulfills that promise that marketers that want to execute at scale without actually having to lift a finger and log into any of those systems. They can experiment, they can run 600 campaigns within an hour. Um, and the system will monitor those campaigns for them and optimize towards what those marketers care about most, which is pipeline. Did they generate and trigger pipeline for sales? And did that pipeline close into net new sales or not? All the steps in the middle, clicks and impressions and leads and MQLs and lead scores and segmentation and all those metrics are provided. But at the end of the day, money in, money out, the system knows how to optimize toward what works, which was the promise for Metadata.
Wow. And I love this because I think to your point earlier, when somebody gets into marketing, Maybe it's like some like bait and switch, right? Because you think, I want to be a marketer because I want to be creative. I want to write and visualize and, create a voice and a message. And then suddenly you're like, what? This isn't what I signed up for. It's
Totally.
really, really interesting. So to that, how can we help those marketers? And the topic of today's show outlines that. America, what is today's topic?
The topic is helping B2B marketers automate paid campaigns. And the question is, how have changes in B2B marketing made marketing operation systems a necessary build? So you already told us about the importance of this kind of system. So could you tell us how it works? Why did you choose this topic? You can start with both of the question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
I think it's something you're creating, right? I think the
Uh-huh.
biggest question is, what is a marketing operations system?
Yeah, and it is something we're creating. So if you look at the marketing technology space as a whole, there is this thing called what's the name of that diagram? I think it's called the Lumascape. It's essentially this diagram that shows, I think, something like 9,000 companies today in this space. It's a shit show. It's a ridiculously long number of technologies, and as a marketer, you're kind of you drown. You don't know what am I supposed to what am I supposed to buy and download and use first. Um, and that kind of situation, and it's good. I mean, the fact that there are many technologies in the marketing technology space is not bad. It means there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of need, and you can create a lot of new things, which is great. The problem is that the users, the marketers, we don't know what are we supposed to buy and use next, and how are we going to use all of those technologies in cohesion, how are we going to use them together. That problem and essentially presents this opportunity to build a platform, to build an operating system that manages all of those technologies together in unison, essentially in a way that they all work towards a common goal. So that you don't, first of all, you break down the silos that every application has. So for example, think about Gong.io. Gong.io is a piece of technology that can record your conversation, your sales conversations, and tell you which deals are going to close, which not, who are the good salespeople, who are not. They're checking the ratio between asking questions and answering, talking and listening. They pick up on the keywords that make a customer say, aha, or I'm excited, or I don't want to talk to you anymore. And they use all of these insights and they deliver those insights to salespeople. But what about taking all those keywords that are working and putting them in your AdWords campaign? What about using the people who are using good snippets and putting them in your outreach email campaigns? There's a lot more to be done. And because there's data silos between those technologies, it's kind of kept. Everyone is working within their own area and they're not sharing data, and there's no system to do much with all of them. And that's what our metadata is here to do. It's here to integrate to your entire sales and marketing stack, to your Drift chatbot, or your Qualified, or your SalesLoft, or Outreach, or HubSpot, or Marketo, and your website, and your buyer intent data, and the list goes on and on. And instead of just connecting and maybe giving you some data or insight, it actually operationalizes it. It takes the data and the actions that are possible to do, and instead of waiting for a human to read the data, to figure out the insight and take action, it skips the human and it just goes and takes the action on behalf of the company. And of course, depending on your comfort level, you can either approve everything or you can just set it on autopilot and let it run. But I can tell you, we have one customer who ran something like 13,000 campaigns in a matter of 6 months, something that is humanly impossible to do. It doesn't matter how big, even if you have 50 people in your agency that you're using, you're not going to run 13,000 campaigns. And the bigger issue is, how do you take those 13,000 campaigns and monitor them day in, day out, and then fine tune into the 500 or 1,000 campaigns that yield the vast majority of your pipeline? That's what the system does, and that's what you need an operating system, because this is not going to stop. Innovation is only going to keep growing. There are going to be more technologies with machine learning and AI, and there are so many technologies coming up. It's only going to become more and more technologies to operate, and more opportunity. And so you want to have a system that leverages all this innovation, but also centralizes the execution around it.
Wow, that's incredibly impressive. A lot of numbers and a lot of data. My first question is actually coming back to those numbers. Let's use this example of the 13,000 campaigns. Are 13,000 campaigns necessary? I mean, that's my first question. Like, what? I mean, I think for example, I've spoken to many, like UX, UI researchers and designers, and their argument is that you don't actually need to talk to tons and tons of people. Like, you can get a lot of solid data out of 5, 10, 15 solid users. So what would the argument be of why do we need that much scale? What are you able to discover that you wouldn't discover with 500
Absolutely.
or
It's
less?
a great question. And there is definitely, how do you call it, like diminishing returns. If you're exaggerating with your experimentation, it's a zero-sum game. So it's how much time do you have, how rich is your marketing mix, and I'm referring to how much content do you have, how many creatives do you have, how many different segments in the market are you going after, how many channels are you enabling and activating. So you have all those variables, and then finally you have your budget. How much money do you have to spend? How much pipeline you're looking to get?
The really important question.
All of them are. Look, if you have $5,000 in budget, you should never use this piece of software like Metadata, because
Mm.
if you have $5,000, you don't want to waste or spend any piece of that on a software to manage that budget. It's like if you have $10 million in your bank account, you probably want a few people helping you to manage that money. But if you have 10,000, you're not going to pay 5,000 to someone to manage your $10,000, right? It doesn't make any sense. And it's the same here. It's also your marketing mix. So even if you have $1 million, but actually you only have one offer, and you only have like two creatives, and you're only enabling LinkedIn and Facebook, how much experimentation are you going to do? You only have like 5, 10 different variations. But when you have a mid-market company, like when you have a company that has, let's say, 10 products or even 2 products, and they generated like 20 different creatives, like one time it's with a puppy, and one time it's with a cat, and one time it's a big banner, and one time it's red, one time it's blue, one time it's sign up now and learn more, one time you put it on a lead gen form on Facebook, one time you put it with a drift chatbot on your website, then your universe of experiments is starting to expand. And that's where you talked about bait and switch, and it's totally like that. That's where you move away from your dream of being Don Draper from Mad Men, for being like a crazy analyst that wakes up with like 7 monitors and tries to like monitors all of these campaigns at once. And you try to A/B test everything, and it just becomes a crazy shit show. And instead, if you multiply all the variations you have, so you have 20 creatives, you have 5 offers, boom, you already have 100 experiments right there. Now you're enabling Legion and landing pages on Facebook. Now you have 200. Now you open up LinkedIn. Now you have 400. Google AdWords. You're starting opening up all those different variations. You
I
end up
see.
with 5,000 experiments. And now the chances that you, as a human or a group of humans, the chances that you're going to land on the best, it's a Pareto rule. It's like the 20-80 rule. I think in everything in life, but definitely here. If you think that you're going to land on the best performing combinations just by guessing, I'm telling you that's impossible. If you're amazing, you're gonna land on 5, 4. You're gonna come up with, out of 5,000, 10,000, coming up with the best 0.1% is amazing already. But you're not gonna come up with the 10%, 15% best experiments. That's why a system that runs experimentation at scale and optimizes for what matters, not for vanity metrics, things that are not actually giving you business. Like you may think that something is working really well because it's getting lots of clicks. But then if you're getting 1,000 clicks and you paid $1,000 for it from one experiment, and you got 5 clicks, but you generated one customer out of it, which one is better? If they both cost $1,000, the one that generated 5 clicks and one customer. And so that kind of optimization is done significantly better with a machine, with a computer, versus a human trying, trial and error on their own.
And how
Nice.
does it work? For example, I'm using Hubspot. It's my sales tool. How do you integrate all this information? Is it like an additional tool that you put on Hubspot? Or how does it work?
Yeah, it's actually a very simple OAuth integration. So when you go into the metadata integrations, which is what you need to do when you're on board, and HubSpot CRM is one of the CRMs that we support. It's actually one of the two. It's Salesforce and HubSpot CRM. So HubSpot CRM, you'll just click on it. It will pop up a model window that says, do you allow metadata to take over your life? Basically, like, do you give it permissions to read and write a little bit into HubSpot? You usually just read. And once you click approve, you just help metadata map the fields, make sure that the first name here is the first name, that you didn't make any custom attributions in HubSpot, and that's it. Then metadata knows how to read all the way there. So if your sales cycle is 2 months, and it will show in HubSpot after 2 months that it's a close lost or close won customer, then the system will know, and it will be able to learn, say, oh, look, that ad led to an impression, led to a click, led to a lead, led to an MQL, led to a customer, a demo, and then a customer. I know something is working here.
Very, very interesting. So I get to your point here, and thank you for that breakdown, because it really makes a lot of sense of how that can blow up, so quickly. So going in terms of different campaigns and different possibilities, it's exponential. So talking a little bit now about the offers or the creatives. Earlier, you mentioned the importance of B2B, and you honed in specifically on B2B software companies. Is that still the case, or is that still your market and your client, or is metadata able to impact other B2B verticals as well?
Yes. No, we're early, so we have a couple of hundred customers at this point, a little bit more than that, and so we're very early. And there's like this it's called crossing the chasm, right? Like, we're very early on in the early adopters. So I would say vast majority of our customers are tech customers, software, sometimes hardware, but tech customers. We do have banks, healthcare, manufacturing, and others as well that we started expanding into. But I would say these are still early adopters in their vertical. And the early adopters, by definition, are the software and IT companies today, at least the internet companies. So it definitely applies to other use cases, but we start the first 1,000 customers. I would say vast majority of them are going to be software, internet, IT, high-tech companies from this version or the other, while we're slowly going to expand into other verticals.
Okay. And that makes sense, like tapping into the idea of early adapters. Another thing that you mentioned earlier in the show was your ability of how much control you as, the marketer, the human, gets to maintain versus, giving metadata the keys to the castle, so to speak. So I, for one, definitely am a controller. It would be very, very hard for me to just trust something and be like, sure, go for it. I would definitely be one of those individuals that, like, let me check this out. Let me read your suggestion. Oh yeah, that's cool. Let's go for it. Right. So I would like to talk to that tech a little bit. Like, what are you utilizing to even get to those suggestions, and how, like, reliable, how good is that? Like, I know right now with marketing, it's personalization is really important. And how are you able to present, something that's automated as something that's actually human with a face and with a name? How does that work?
I mean, we're using AI today everywhere, and it's seamless, right? Like, the way you search, the way you type something on Gmail and it auto completes it. You call customer service and you think you're talking to a human, you're actually talking to a bot. You're chatting somewhere, you're talking to a bot. You're driving. So we're using AI more and more, and it's just, if you make it seamless, then people don't even notice. But I do get it's hard to give the keys to the castle, like you say, from day one, and so you don't have to. Usually you get that confidence based on results. If you're accustomed to picking up the phone and asking your broker to buy a bunch of stocks, and have that person call someone else and do that for you, and then after half an hour you made that transaction, or if you're more accustomed to opening up Robinhood or Fidelity, and in 30 milliseconds you made 1,000 transactions, if the results are there and you get the time back, you're happy. If there was a fuck up, excuse my language, then you're going to be super paranoid. And then you're going to think twice before you do it next time. And so our job is to make sure not to automate before we're ready. And we made mistakes. So there's a decision tree. Our decision tree, I think today, I think Emily, who's a VP of engineering, or Lena, a VP of product, they told me that it's running something like taking 1 million actions per day. So many of those actions, yes, you can wait and like approve everything, but at some point it's going to be like virtue signaling. You're not actually looking at anything and approving it. It's just like sometimes, I'm still approving in many of the expenses on Travel Bank, which is like the expense management system. And unless something is ridiculous, unless I see like, $7,000 expense on something that I didn't know about, I'm not going to see the difference. I hope no one is, from the team is looking. I'm not really going to check the difference between like a $300 and a $700. I'm not going to look to see if you got like a balcony, nice room, or like, I'm not going to do that. I don't care. It's like I have to trust the team is doing what they're supposed to do. Similarly with the system, I'm going to get, it's going to say, hey, change the bid here from $2.36 to like $3.09, or I'm changing the call to action from learn more to try now. I'm like, go for it. Great. And unless it's going to make some obvious mistakes and put my put the ad somewhere it's not supposed to be, or have a curse in there, or like put an odd picture or something that is going to hurt my brand, I'm just, if the results are there and the last 1,000 actions worked out, or the last 10,000 actions worked out, and I'm getting back 2 days out of the week, I'm going to say, go for it. It's cool. And I'm going to put my time into some other value add work.
That's a really valid point. And I would like to talk to the side of the creatives then, the people who are able to put that trust into AI and let it go and be like, cool. How have you seen maybe shifts in them and their ability to perform, to think, to create, and how is that ultimately impacting the future of their businesses?
Yeah, that's awesome. So you can see that suddenly people have more time working on their content and creative, and have their ideas tested, versus, so instead of putting all the time into the execution and into the, okay, now we have a good idea, let's spend 3 weeks executing, they have more time coming up with more ideas and more experiments and more thesis, and just letting the system try it out for them. So for example, um, let's say, and we have one of our customers did that, right? They wanted to go after a new market, and so instead of taking it 3 months to go after a new market, like understanding what are companies that you need to, what kind of creatives are going to work out of the creatives they have, what kind of content offers should they go with, what channels should they test, what kind of mediums within those channels, so on and so forth. They just said, hey, we have this new concept that we want to try. And they just drag and drop all the creative, drag and drop all the content, drag and drop, and created the audience segments within metadata, because it's possible. And they showed them, okay, you have 300 experiments. You should spend at least, I don't know, let's say 50 grand on this campaign, this new idea innovation. Click execute and let the system tell you good idea, bad idea, and how to do it best. And it will fine tune from like those 500 campaigns into either 20, 50, if the idea is good and shows some merit, or 0. Or it will show you very quickly, look, this is not a good idea. None of these segments, none of these prospects within those segments are interested in those ideas at all. And so, Zoe problems I see on the chat.
Yeah, so he has a daughter, and now
Ah,
yeah, but don't worry, we can keep a
no, it's
conversation
cool.
going.
My daughter's name is Zoe too.
That's great. Yeah, so it's really interesting. Actually, you mentioned that this customer wants to go for another market. If maybe if you want to create another whole sequence, you can use this tool to improve yourself, right? What other elements you can, for example, you can change your market. You want to change your whole sequence, or maybe you can change the key personas that you want to reach out, right? Are there other variables or elements that now you can see on your customers that are transforming their processes?
Yeah, so with metadata, you kind of get two things. The main thing you'll use metadata for is to automate and predict your growth. If you need to grow 100% this year or 200% this year, you use a system like metadata, it will give you the learnings that you would otherwise get in a year, in a month. Legitimately, when you run 13,000 campaigns, you go through what you would otherwise go through in a few years, in like 6 months. And so if you want to move fast and you want to learn super fast and you have the ability to, the feedback loop to actually take actions based on this feedback and the agility, this is perfect for you. Another thing it will teach you is what doesn't work in your company. It could be anything from um, your content sucks, no one wants to read it. Your creative is boring and no one wants to click on it. The audience segment that you're going after is the wrong audience segment, or the channel is the wrong channel. No one is hanging out in those channels. Your buyers don't seem to be on Reddit or TikTok, or the chat or the medium that you're using. Maybe you're doing an ad or a sponsored update versus an email, which would work better for you. And so it will teach you all of those things. That's one thing that you get immediately. Like you'll see quickly if you have a bottleneck in your process, it'll highlight that bottleneck immediately because everything will get stuck there. Another area that it'll show you is that we have, I would say, at this point, like at least a dozen customers where they had a challenge in their sales process, unrelated to marketing, right? We're a marketing operating system, but the system bumped up a challenge that they had in their sales process because we could show that you're getting inbound demo requests from your dream customers, from the dream persona within those customers, and yet those didn't turn out to pipeline or to sales. Why? And suddenly they realize, oh, well, it's taking us 2 weeks to follow up on a lead versus like 15 to 20 minutes, which is the recommended time. So guess what? 90% of that momentum is dead. No one remembers why they signed up for that ebook anymore or for that demo. Or yeah, there are plenty of things that come up. Sometimes there's an actual break, like a technical break between the system. And so there are a bunch of things that will flow as an issue, whether it's in marketing or something else, because you're now accelerating the learning and you're just like pushing through all that volume, and it will be very obvious to see where the bottleneck is. It's kind of like going through like a process optimization, like in a manufacturing process, where you can see, okay, I obviously have a weak link here. I have to fix this process so that the operation goes much smoother. This kind of testing will allow you to do that.
That's fantastic. You know, we're coming to the final minutes of our show, and I think it's interesting that you started to talk about metadata and in terms of it telling you what's going well, what isn't going so well. And I would like to turn that sort of inward. You as a leader, you as, you know, your company's, what are we coming up on the 5-year, 6-year mark or something? So what have you learned throughout this time of what works well for you and maybe what didn't work so well and that you would have done differently looking back?
Man, we need like 12 hours for this, but no, there's a lot. It's really endless. I can talk about it all day. There are many things that have worked and still not work, that I still have a lot more growth to do. So I would say the first thing I've learned during the past 6 years that I know nothing. There's like a million more things for me to learn. You know, the older you get, the more you realize you don't know, at least for me. Uh, Managing my personal psyche has been and still is one of the biggest challenges, being consistent and waking up every morning in a consistent manner for my team. Um, Figuring out how to manage the ups and downs, figuring out to manage people who are obviously, well, obvious now, but wasn't obvious 6 years ago, the biggest asset for any company. Um, Learning how to ask for help, learning how to have a framework for everything. So not do things just like that, but actually have a framework. You know, you want to promote someone, you get excited about promoting someone. Guess what? Don't promote them immediately. It's a bad idea. Have a framework. Understand, you know, are they the right person? What's the expectation from this new role? Can they occupy the role before you hire them? Can you set up the expectations ahead of time so that when they do get promoted, it's obvious to everyone this is the right decision, because you can't reverse that. That's just one example. A framework for decision making. You're about to make a decision. How do you make sure you don't make the wrong? You're gonna make the wrong decisions for sure, but how do you not make more wrong decisions than right decisions? So like, don't make a decision from a place of fear. You know, be in the right mindset when you make a decision. Make a decision, you know, time box a decision, because not making a decision for like weeks is making a decision, and usually that's the worst decision to make. So there are a bunch of just repeating patterns that you learn as an entrepreneur. Just like you squeeze 5 years into one when you use metadata in terms of your execution. You squeeze 5 or 10 years into one when you're an entrepreneur in a startup, because you're just stuck in this like boilerplate where everything goes fast, a lot faster. And so you get all those learnings quickly. But I think, I think it's the best thing in the world, because you have to learn those things anyway. You might as well learn them fast.
I love it. I love your mindset and your words of wisdom. Thank you very, very much. So coming up now, I think congratulations to you and to this new path that you set out. Congratulations to Metadata for, just really spearheading a marketing operation system and creating something that's absolutely new. Thank you so much for your time with us today, Gil.
Thank you, Kim. I have one question for you before we finish.
Yeah.
How old is Zoe?
It's for those of you, see, Doja Live viewers are familiar with this. Zoe is 4. Here, guys, in our private chat, I'm like, sorry, off camera, I've got like screaming and pounding happening. She's 4. So those are the adventures of working from home. Thank you.
Love it. My Zoe is 3 years old, so
I like the name. I like the name. Zoe means life. So you get it. And she's full of it, believe me. All right, cool. So we do have one more show coming up today, this week. America, what's that?
Yeah, on Thursday, we're going to have a show with Anton, and we're going to talk about challenges of a small engineering team revolutionizing sales. And the question is, how many engineers do you need to create a hit hub for sales? The show is going to be on Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, so a lot of times that naturally just happens where we have coordinating themes throughout the week. So this one's all about marketing and sales. Thank you again, Gil, and everyone else. Catch you Thursday, 12 o'clock Pacific. Bye for now.